Hey everyone, welcome back to Field Stories. I'm Chris Catola with Michela Corey, and once again, Nick is back in England, but still deserting us because it's Nick, and his life is so exciting and so fun, and he's got so many things to do that he just couldn't be here. But
popular.
So even though, to be fair, he couldn't be here because the time zone didn't work for him well, because in the East, what time is it where you are right now, Michela?
It's 4:43.
Yeah, of Eastern time. Yeah, well, for me, it is currently almost 11 p.m. It's 10:43 p.m. because I'm in Austria still. But you know what? I'm a team player, and I'm here, Nick. So you know we're going to bother you. He said, I have no sympathy for Nick because he's been all over doing cool things. So, you know, he would be on me. So, but we love you.
I know.
Yeah. But we love you,
I
Nick.
know,
We
I'm-
miss you. We'll see you next week. And we're probably going to see a lot more of him over the next few weeks. So he can tease me about me not being available in the few weeks. But anyways, how are you doing? How are you doing, Nick? How has the week been? What are you doing? What's the weather like? All those typical cliche topics that we like to do as humans. How are you? What's new?
I'm great. I honestly took the weekend off. I had a lot of parties to go to.
Oh, bloody that.
No,
Yes, exactly.
No, I just decided, honestly. I know
Great.
you've been partying. I decided not to because I'm exhausted, and I've been so for work right now I'm doing a lot of wood turtle surveys, and I'm traveling just because like I'm the only turtle biologist in the state, so I'm traveling all across the state. And even though it's small, it's a lot of driving. So I've been on the in the Berkshires, like the very bougie Berkshires,
The Berkshires.
and the rivers.
Even the name is bougie.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is
Anything
so
with
bougie.
anything with a sure in it, I think, is bougie. Just to the record.
I know. It's gorgeous out there. I did get warned about the resident bear though. I was stopping to look at this river to see like, oh, you know what?
It's the black
wood turtles
bear.
in this
Nobody
lake.
cares. Come on.
I know, that's what I was saying. But like, okay, when you have a man with no teeth, you know, he looks like he's been through life, right? You know, he goes like taking me down this path. He goes, oh, you can park here, you can take this path down. He goes, walking away. He goes, hey, just don't forget to watch out for the bear. And I was like, you're right now, okay. But you know, it's fine. I've endured so many bears. I need to actually get bear spray one day, but instead I just endured the bluffs, you know, and I'm just like, bring it. Like I'm ready for death. I don't know. So anyways, that's been my week, and then I just kind of chilled and read fantasy smut books all weekend. And what about you? How is your party life?
All right. Well, I mean, that should be the clip we use to bring the viewers in. I mean, that should be like Ellis. We got to give shout out to Ellis, our incredible editor on the show. Ellis, clip this, and this has to go on a story or something to promote the show. I'm just saying. If you want to know the feel of our show, the level of professionalism, that's it. And I love it. That's the environment I like. I like this. It's good. Yeah, it's great. Great. Oh.
Buy them for me, babies. Like that's all I want, honey. That's all I want.
Okay. What?
I should take that out.
No. We stays in, but we cap it there. That's the ceiling of it. That's the ceiling. I'm doing great. I'm very tired, but I'm good. I've been, as I think I said last week, a very rare vacation, which is sadly ending soon. Although I'm going back to Peru, which isn't bad, but yeah. Yeah. And I've been enjoying some time with friends. One of our guests, second guest, I think, in the show, Lucas, was his birthday. And then he had a nice weekend in the Alps here in Austria with some friends. And we went to look for brown bears, and we had an amazing encounter, like 3 different separate occasions. We had brown bears right beside our hut. When we drove up the hill with the truck, like as we're driving up, there's already a mother and her cub like waiting for us. It's like ridiculous luck, like so cool, amazing. It's first time I'd been in Croatia, and it was just a really cool. And actually, the guy, well, this is a whole other topic, and like I almost would like to interview this guy, but I'll just make it quick. Then we'll get to our guest this week. We talked to him. He's basically a forester who decided, hey, you know what? People like bears. I can build a tiny hut, and people will pay me to watch the bears. He's right, because it's a great way to make additional revenue off of protecting these animals, right? It's classic ecotourism story. And the thing is, he said in that region of Croatia, there's around 200 brown bears. So it's one of the biggest populations in Europe, actually. And for those of you who don't know, brown bears, grizzly bears, same species, different subspecies. But, for those of you who don't know, brown bear is, it's basically a grizzly, a little smaller, but it's the same species technically. So big bears. And he said, yeah, each year they hunt about 3, but other than that, it keeps the population stable and well. And he's like, I said to him, it's like, do you have issues? Like, how do people feel in this area? Because this is the middle of nowhere. This is like really remote, one of the most remote parts of Eastern Europe for wildlife. And this whole story is about the bars and restaurants there, but that's another day. Anyways, so this guy was, this guy, that's the after show. This guy said that, he's like, no, we have no problems. Everybody's fine with them. And just the way he was like, yeah, we leave them alone. They leave us alone. We don't have any fights. It's no problem. They just do their thing. And, it's just so interesting to contrast that to like other parts of Europe, because I'm here with my friends. They obviously live in sort of bigger parts of like Austria, areas of Austria that have more people, more farmers. And obviously areas in Germany that have more people, more farmers. And, the concept and the idea of wolves and bears is just like, oh, my God, they're going to kill us. They're going to eat our babies. They're going to eat our pets. They're going to eat our sheep. They're going to eat our animals. And, yeah, it happens occasionally, but it's just so overblown. And I found it so fascinating to see how people who grew up in this area, in the woods and in nature, have this like, yeah, we leave them alone. They leave us alone. We don't do anything dumb. Everything's fine attitude, versus people who are so detached from nature, cities, or farmers who grew up with this really negative connotation, this negative association. It's just really interesting and fascinating to see. I was so impressed by a forester who just kind of lived his life in nature. He's like, yeah, no, they're fine. We like them. No issues at all. And I was just like, oh my God. So that was really cool. The whole experience. Really great weekend. A lot of fun, amazing people. And so that's where our respective weeks have been. And so this week's episode, I'm choking because I don't have a glass of water or wine like you do, Michela. This week's episode, or wine, This week's episode is with, I guess, a recent friend of mine who I met when I was in Cusco about 6 weeks ago now at a bat conference, Carlos. And he's currently working on bat research in Mexico. And we asked him to join the show to talk a bit about his work and talk a bit about conservation in East Colombia, actually, so a bit about Colombia. And I know he teased me at the show, at the conference, I should say. He teased me about a really good story he'd have for us on the show. So hopefully it will be a good story. I feel like it probably will. Generally speaking, when somebody from that part of the world tells you they have a good story, it's usually pretty crazy. So I think people should probably stick around and try to listen to it. Without further ado, we will get to it. So let's get to an interview with Carlos. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show, and we're really excited to have our guest today, Carlos Restrepo, which I probably didn't pronounce it with enough Latin flair, but I'm doing my best. I'm still a gringo at heart. I can only do so much, Carlos. Carlos is one of the, I guess, recent friends of the show, recent friends of myself. Carlos and myself met at a bat conference in Peru, in Cusco, about, I guess it was over a month ago now. It kind of seems like last week, but it's over a month ago now. And we just kind of hit it off talking about many things, some things we won't talk about on this show, but also many things relating to bats, bat ecology, bat acoustics, all things bats. And really cool person, really cool biologist, really knowledgeable, really fun. And I thought, it'd be great to have you on the show. So we're really happy to have you, Carlos. Thanks for taking the time to join us. And if you could tell our viewers and I guess Michela as well, a little bit about yourself and your background, that would be great so we can kind of get to know you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for this invitation. This is exciting to me because I have never been in one interview like this, right? So, I'm a bat biologist, Colombian bat biologist, a young one, if you like to say, but I've been working with bats for more than 10 years now, so I have a little bit of a background, mostly in bat bioacoustic and ecolocation, the ecology of echolocation. So those are my main expertises. 9 years ago, I traveled to Mexico to do my master's, and I was specializing in sensory ecology, how organisms sense their environment and react to it. So those were my main interests. Since kid, I was like having these visions of how animals see the world. Now I'm doing fine with the answers that I'm collecting through the years of my work. So I'm fine regarding that. Mexico, I've been working with a lot of things regarding bad ecology and bad bioacoustics. I designed monitoring projects for wind farms and solar farms all around Mexico, from southwest Oaxaca, Veracruz to northwest in Baja California and Sonora or Tamaulipas. And there's a lot of stories to tell about those trips. And that's the main reason I'm here, right? So that's good.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, Carlos. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's lots of things to get into, and I know at the moment you're primarily working in Mexico, as you said. But obviously, you're from Colombia, and so you have some experience, obviously, with that region, that country. And I guess I'd be curious to see your feelings about where I guess bat conservation, bat research is, but also just overall conservation research is in Colombia now at this point. And I know, again, maybe you might say, you haven't worked there as much recently, but I know you have a lot of friends from there and a lot of connections there. And, it's a country that is incredibly biodiverse. It's always a country that, like, for example, Peru and Colombia always fight about the most birds every year, the big year in birds, like which country gets the most birds. And it's an indication of how incredibly biodiverse Colombia is as a country. But, we all know the history of violence in the country as well, which did impact conservation greatly and still does. So maybe some of our listeners who maybe don't know how that might impact conservation, maybe the nuances of it, maybe you could give us a little bit of background from your perspective on that topic.
Yeah, I have a broader context since I've been working in Mexico constantly the 9 past years, but as Colombian, I am pretty aware of the situation over there, and since the last decade, it has been changing a lot because of the peace treaty and other things that are happening regarding the terrorist groups occupying the forest of Colombia and the most remote areas that government cannot reach. So it has two phases, as everything in our existence. The bad one is that you cannot go, hopefully, in an area that were occupied by the guerrillas or the paramilitary army, because there's a lot of landmines and things like that, or booby traps, or I don't know. But that situation prompted the conservation of those same areas, because no one's getting there for lodging or for poaching or things that we acknowledge that are the primary drivers of habitat loss and species loss. So has two phases. We cannot go over there to collect data, but in the past years, now it's changing. There's a lot of crusading in the unexplored territories for 25, 30 years, 40 years now. So it has two phases.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Carlos, could you elaborate a little bit more on your work in Mexico right now? I know you said that you're looking at sensory data with possibly windmills over there. Am I correct with that?
Well, something like that is a little bit an issue driven by my curiosity about how sensory works. So there's a lot of sensory input for the organisms out there that resembles natural resources or things that they might want to collect or the mate or something like roost associated, right? So there's a lot of changes in the environment and the sensory landscape promoted by us humans with our activities. that can impose novel ecological novelties in those landscapes that animals cannot cope that easily or that fast to react and adapt to them and thrive. So there's a lot of photovoltaic development over the arid region of Mexico. It's like most of the northern half of Mexico. It's an arid land, and there's a lot of problems with water scarcity. The water quality is not quite right because all the things we already know. And my hypothesis go in the sense that some of the infrastructure we are putting out there might resemble a little bit or a little much to those natural resources organisms in their evolutionary history are used to seek for, right? So in terms of sensory capacities or sensory phenomena, smooth acoustic surfaces are all over ground, and water is a smooth acoustic surface that bats can detect and try to access through their echolocation signals. So there's a context when information gets a little bit conflictive around the availability and the availability of resources. So bats can have a hard time trying to bring water from a flat surface, for instance. Right?
Yeah, I mean, just maybe because I understand what you're explaining because because we've talked about it and it makes sense. But I feel like some people who aren't used to maybe how bat echolocation works, I'll just sort of I'll explain it a little bit maybe, and you can build on it a bit more if you want, Carlos. Sorry, I don't mean to speak for you, but I know it's a complicated concept for a lot of people maybe to not. No, it's okay.
Before talking this.
No, it's fine.
I have a scientific mindset for these things.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. It's like, obviously, it's complicated because it takes a while. I mean, basically, I guess to sort of elaborate on what your research is about, from what I understand, speaking to you, is basically it's the fact that bats interpret surfaces that are smooth to be water. And that obviously in a natural environment that would be water, but we as humans create things that are kind of like water but aren't water. And that, correct me if I'm wrong, that could include things like solar panels, correct?
Yeah, solar panels, greenhouses, every flat surface that is like glass, metal, including plastics, could reflect an echo as the water does. So bats can recognize that acoustic cue as water. So because it has all the characteristics, the physics is the same. Talking about water or metal or plastic or glass, because those are acoustic mirrors that reflect all the sound that is projected to them in a special way that bat can recognize.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's So I just thought, because it's such a cool topic and it's such a cool research you're doing. I just want to make sure everybody was on our same page as that, because it's really interesting. And I guess to further build upon this topic, because it's really cool and really interesting. And actually, to be honest, before we spoke, it's something that had never clicked in my mind. I know bats, of course, view water in that way, but the concept that these artificial surfaces, which you're totally right, are to them the same, could be an issue. But it never clicked in my head. So it's very, very cool, very fascinating. And I guess maybe, it could be an issue anywhere in the world, obviously, but maybe you could speak a little bit more about why it could be, I guess, particularly, why you'd be inspired to research it in an area like Mexico, which, from my perspective, it feels like an area that would maybe be dry and maybe water resources are limited. Maybe you could talk a bit more about that and how important water is for bats and their ecology and their biology.
Yeah, actually, Well, this interest is promoted by the notion that water is disappearing in the dry part of Mexico, and the past 2 months, it was a heavy rain due to the tropical storms from the hurricanes from the Pacific and from the Gulf of Mexico, but those were rare events, and the past 3 years were dry as hell. So, yeah, the last time I was in the field last week, there was plenty of water bodies everywhere and happy bats everywhere, I guess. I'm now looking for those data, but what is important regarding this hypothesis is that water is disappearing in a landscape scale, and photovoltaic projects are appearing in a landscape scale as in a fast pace that you cannot imagine. So we need clean energy. That's right. We need that, but we also need to pay attention in that green dilemma, because you want to produce energy in a very sustainable way, but what are you doing with the ecosystems and habitats that were occupying those sites where the projections are with the best solar yield and things like that, that happens in arid Mexico, in the Mexican plateau.
Carlos, I don't know if you could explain what happens when the bats do confuse solar panels with water. What happens to these bats? Are there ways that mitigate that there are? Sorry, she's always a guest. Yeah, sorry. And are there any ways where a scientist or can work with these utility workers to combat these events where bats are continuously, confusing solar panels with water?
Well, this is by now this is a hypothesis, right? I had to test that effectively there's an attraction phenomena involved in all of these mechanisms, right? So, but certainly I have circumstantial evidence of bats tending to use these areas where photovoltaic developments are, and bats in not a pretty good shape. There's an observation of mine. I'm telling you the secrets of the industry, and let's not. This is a podcast right now, but hopefully this will not get into the ears of the companies involved in that scenario, right? So it's 2019. I'm working in Sonora in some photovoltaic project. Sonora is a region of Mexico characterized for its dryness. Its heat is pretty hot over there, and it's a desert, basically. So there's no fresh water around the photovoltaic project, square miles around that photovoltaic project, and there's only the coastline, like 3 or 4 miles away, the photovoltaic plant. And there's this bat. I remember that I need to talk about more the differences of bats regarding this problem, but there's this bat that there's records of this bat flying up to 100 meters, 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, colliding with airplanes even. So there's this bat, Greek bat, Eumops perotis is the species. It flies pretty fast, pretty narrow wings, and it's not a pretty maneuverable species. Its flight is not very maneuverable. So there's this species hanging in the barbed wire of the perimetral fence of this park. There's no water bodies in there or around, and there's this bat trying to get to somewhere around 2 meters high above from the ground. And at the other side of the fence, there's this part 20 meters away, the panels. So it triggered my mind, and I was like, what the hell, what's going on? let's make a hypothesis. And I've been like for 5 years working in that hypothesis that points to this study that I'm trying to develop to test if there's some kind of attractivity towards flat surfaces that reflects echo, and mostly for these species that lacks of maneuverability, like the eumobs, the promobs, big bats that fly fast and pretty above the ground, so they cannot like change their flight path if they are en route to water body in the short course, like in 5-6 meters. It's impossible for them. So my hypothesis is that this bat is hanging around in that barbed wire because he was trying to access water. There's no water over there, only solar panels. So we need more science to prove that, but that's circumstance that cannot point otherwise to other things. Like there's a panel, there's no water. This is a desert. These bats fly pretty above the ground. What he's doing here?
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, and I mean I know that as you said, it's still a hypothesis about the impact of solar panels. But one thing that is pretty much known and proven is that bats, for example, will use swimming pools in people's backyards, and sometimes they'll even use the swimming pool covers, like the very tight covers that are over top of the pools. And many records of that, and bats sort of bouncing off the top of that and viewing that plastic as water sources. And I guess the one thing that I just sort of follow up on that, and maybe Carlos, you can build upon this, is just to explain to the listeners who don't know about ecology, maybe like yourself and me do, the importance of water. Because you can talk about it, but obviously it's all bats need water. They're living animals, they're mammals, they drink. But I think it's maybe important to explain a bit about, especially insectivorous bats that are only eating insects, how important water is to them. And then also maybe you could just talk a bit about not just, in the case you cited, the bat is obviously caught in a barbed wire fence. I don't think we need to explain why that's bad. Unfortunately, that's very obvious. But in the case of resources being used for no reason, that's another aspect maybe people don't think about, is the fact that, why is water so important for them? But then also, how can it be harmful to them to waste energy going somewhere for water that isn't water? Because I think regardless of, I think your hypothesis probably has a lot of merit and it's probably true. But either way, I think it's really interesting to show how modification of habitat can have a big impact on all wildlife, including bats. So maybe you could just talk a bit about why water is so important, and also a bit about how that could also impact the resources these bats are utilizing to search for this water.
Mainly water bodies concentrates the density of the resources that insectivorous bats uses, because all of these mosquitoes and ephemeropterals and other types of insects that spend a life stage in the water tend to get out the water in their adult stage. So bats can take advantage of these swarmings over water bodies, and these are pretty common over any water body. So besides hydration, foraging is the main resource that bats get from water bodies. So if we modify the availability and quality of these resources in the landscape of the bats, and in a landscape with all these harsh problems as water scarcity, as habitat change for mounting projects, being roads, trailways, photovoltaic plants, wind farms, etc. All these changes promotes the change of the siting of the water bodies that bats know. So bats have an incredibly spatial memory. They can use landmarks in their night flight to reach all the interesting parts of the landscape, and they tend to follow routes as a human does with the highway and his car, and they follow long routes through the landscape to get to those spots. So if those spots disappears, bats will need to invest more energy searching for other resources that probably are not there or not quite easily reachable. So the main problem is that we are modifying the spatial location of the resources for bats. So they will incur in more expenditure for getting those rewards that probably they're not there. And especially in big bats, as I said, they are not very maneuverable. If you have a landscape with a lot of little water bodies, they will not be available for the big species that fly fast, because they need at least 30 or to 40 meters in longitude to that in that flight path to go over the water, in some water, and get up again. So if we have plenty of little water bodies, they will not be pretty accessible to these kind of species that I'm hypothesizing that are the most vulnerable if this scenario happens to be true. So not all the species will respond the same, because myotis or other species that fly low and in the understory can cope with a lot of changes in the habitat, since there's a minimum of the resources, water and some structure in the understory for roosting or for preying. But for these kind of bats that fly fast, fly high, and have no maneuverability, is pretty harsh for them, this type of changes.
Now that's really interesting. And I mean, again, I think that what it highlights is just the complexities of conservation, the complexities of life. I mean, that's why nature is so cool. It's why it's so amazing. That's why we love it all, is how complex it is. But that also means that the threats to wildlife and the conservation solutions are extremely complex as well. So, yeah, really cool topic, Carlos. Thank you for that. Thank you for explaining that and bringing that to our viewers' attention. I really, really appreciate it. So I guess I've had that and got to know you a bit and talked about your project and your hypothesis, and learned a bit more about bats. And yeah, now it's time to go into your story, which is I expect crazy, funny, or a bit of both. I don't know. We'll find out. I don't know anything about it. I know you teased me about it when we were together in Cusco. So let's see what it is, man. Let's go. Vamos, mi amigo.
It's kind of crazy, funny, scary, but
sounds good.
Life changing.
I love that.
It's life changing, mostly. Well, I was young. Well, not that young, but a little bit younger. It was 2019 too. In this same job, I was traveling to Sonora to this photovoltaic plant, then traveling to Baja California to some wind farms. There's only one park over there, but I will not mention them because they are powerful. I'm not.
Yes, don't upset them.
Okay.
This is the situation. This park is lying in the very border of United States, Mexico, California, and Baja California, right? So there's a lot of illegal things happening over there. It's not a secret. But what is a secret is that there's some murky things happening in my study site, and I didn't know. Well, I'm with my friend, old friend from that work. I call him the Chilango. He's from Mexico City, and all the people from Mexico City. For the outsiders are Chilangos, so it's the Chilango. I will quote the Chilango.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'm with the Chilango, and we are both in charge of the path monitoring because the wind farm is expanding its polygon towards west over the same border, but they are occupying a portion of the mountain. There's a pretty famous mountain over there called La Rumorosa. It has a road that is known for it is very dangerous and pretty mortal road. But it's for the thing that most people know La Rumorosa for that road specifically. So the park is on the top of that mountain, and we were used to work in that park, and I saw some sort of shady things happening. Like we saw a migrant half a mile away from with our prisons, and we went like, what the hell? Who's this guy? Why he has no helmet or vest inside the park? We are reporting now, and we were thinking like, wait, something's happening. So we approached this guy, and he was like a zombie, a living dead, with no shoes, only with a little bit of water in one plastic bottle. He was a migrant. He was deported, and he was traversing through the park, going back to Mexico. So for that event, I knew that area was pretty hot area for these kind of things. Time passes, and the people of the wind farm tell us, we are expanding our polygon, and we want you to go over there to do some monitoring for the baseline monitoring before the construction begins. So okay, the parks have to talk with the locals and give the shout to them, hey, there's some biologists working at night, etc., blah, blah, blah. You know how this works, okay? But unfortunately, my company didn't, or I like to think that they didn't warn the locals that we were working that night or that week at night. So, well, I was with the Chilango. We were setting our nets in some random place, pretty beautiful but we were almost starting with our monitoring with the mist nets, and I had my ultrasonic detector ready for the transects, etc. And when we were starting, there were no paperwork, and I went, hey Chilango, where are the formats? We need the formats. Oh no, man, I left them in the hotel. Go Chilango, grab the truck and go to the hotel. So Chilango went to the hotel. I forgot to mention that we were with a local guide. This local guide was from some indigenous tribe in the area called the Pai Pai. He was a fireman too, a firefighter. Sorry, he was a firefighter, and he was from that reserve, in indigenous reserve, and knew all the mountain, and we were like pretty safe with Francisco. And so yeah, the Chilango was gone to the hotel. It was like 14 minutes drive away from the spot that we were working in. And I stayed with Francisco, the local guide. He's a pretty tough guy. And we started, not he, because he has a better ear than me. He started to hear some women and some children over there. And we were strange because what's a lot of women, a lot of children. Let's hide. he told me, I'd wear in the bushes. Yeah, go. I had my reflective vest. Get rid of it. So I get rid of my reflective vest. We were hiding in the bush, and these people were passing through. And here in Mexico, the Mexicans call penadear, to flash a bright lamp over the bushes to see if there's some deer. Penadear is from deer hunting. So they were penadeando us to see if there's some people over there. They didn't saw the mist nets because I don't know how they didn't see the mist nets, but they were like flashing their lights, and we were like all quiet. Did you see that movie? When you have to be all quiet. Well, that was a
quiet.
Yes,
Yes.
quiet place. We were in a quiet place.
Quiet.
Yeah,
So, those people passed. Those were like 40, 50 meters away from the bush we were hiding. Nothing happened. So we kept or waiting for the Chilango to see if he encountered these people in his way back to us. And well, Chilango only told us, no, I saw some people in one truck, and that's it. They didn't tell me nothing. We were okay, cool. We were all again with the mist nets already at the beginning, with the monitoring, with the detector, etc. When Francisco goes again to the bush, and we were no. And Chilango was unable to take out his reflective vest. I was all in black. I working at night. I used to all wear black because Latin America, and and that's why you wear black over here when working at night. Well, we were hiding in the bush, the three of us, and also Francisco, the guy, the local guy, the indigenous, the firefighter. Okay, he's a guy with balls. Well, he was all quiet and didn't even utter the sound, all quiet and all freaked out. And I saw him, what the fuck, cabrón? Well, we were all quiet, and these people begins to reach us. They saw the truck. We had a red truck, so it tells, right?
Yeah,
the truck with the paperwork. There are the nets. There are a lot of stuff for the field work. So they start to like in the inside of the truck, seeing what's happening there, who's there, and nobody around. They start to whistling, and all the three of us were. And while they were whistling, they liked us, and the reflected vest of the Chilango reflected. They directed the whistle toward us, and ¿qué pasa? And I went like, should I answer or no? What does my partner say? They were freaked out. That they were like all cold-blooded. I answer naturally because I'm Colombian, and I know that if someone in the night in the mountains amidst the bushes tells you something, you have to answer because you have no fear for what's coming because you're there doing nothing, only minding your own businesses, right? So my reflex is like, I'm gonna whistle. Hey, what's happening? We're working here. Okay. And did you see anything off? Anything out of the regular? Anything, something like that? Oh no, nothing's going wrong. But they were from this side of the bush, and I was from that side of the bush. We didn't even make eye contact. Only talk to each other blindly.
Hmm.
Push mediated talk. So they went like, okay, cool. So everything's cool. I go, yeah, everything's cool. Fine. Okay, we go with our businesses. They went like 20, 30 seconds, 20, 15 meters or so. 12 gauge shotgun, two shots, two warning shots. So we were like, okay, let's wait these people go and pack our stuff and get the hell out of here. And yeah, those were two warning shots that I didn't even feel nothing because I was through some sentimental phase of my life that I was trying to renew myself. So it was like, okay, this guy just shot me and I had to do something else with my life and I'm beginning now.
Wow.
Oh my God.
And I quit my job. I cursed my last boss. I applied for a new job, for this one, and I met an incredible person. I did a course in Ecuador. Well, a lot of things.
Oh my goodness.
So
Wow.
these people, they saved your life. There you go. They changed your life, Carlos. So you should be thankful that they didn't execute you, and also they changed your life. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I cannot blame that situation to be a bad situation because working in the field, and this is like my take home message for all the viewers and all the listeners. Working in the field as a biologist here in Mexico or Colombia or Peru or any part of Latin America and the global south in Africa and Asia, where insecurity rises and rises and it has no means to an end. You should understand the context and not try to cope with it, right? Not be all freaked out and that's it. I live my work, I live my lifestyle. You have to cope with that and learn to survive in this scientific world as a Latin American scientist. And this type of things, the experience with the coyotes, they are called coyotes in Mexico, the people who traffic with other people through the borders, coyotes. I realized those were the same people from that community, and that the security guard in the part of the park that were near to our field work site was the cousin of this guy, and those are pretty well doing what they are doing. And broad daylight, this guy perhaps is working in a local restaurant, and at night he must be working with the coyotes or things like that, right? And it's pretty darn difficult to tell apart the people that will harm you, that the people that only do this for their living, right? So you must be safe. You must work on your safety in the field, but remember that if you talk with those people, that if you explain yourself that you are not doing anything wrong and you're minding your own business and they should mind their own businesses, it should be fine. I've been there and I survived. So things are like that, and you should work. So you find a way, and perhaps talking is the easiest way.
Yeah, that's a crazy story, and I mean, it's also, you're right, Carlos. It just it shows you the whole new layer of challenges that see in some parts of the world you face when trying to do any type of fieldwork, conservation work. I mean, it's a sad reality that a lot of people, researchers and biologists, face, whether it be poaching in Africa or whether it be dealing with smuggling of some kind, whether it's drugs or in this case, people, basically. It's obviously for those people as well who are being moved around, smuggled, it's pretty horrific, but also like for you and your team, you're just trying to do your work and live your life. And, thankfully you got out of it. But, it's now, I'm sure it's a story, you tell over a beer and it sounds funny, but obviously in the moment, it must have been just so scary. And, it is. Yeah. And it's a pretty intense reminder of what life is really like out there for people living their life, people in those situations, and researchers and other conservationists involved. So, thank you for sharing that. I said it's a pretty crazy story. I guess it's probably not that rare of a story, actually, right? I mean, it's probably something that happens to more people. Maybe they don't get to share it as much, or the way you're sharing it. But I bet you this type of story happens more than we would probably believe in other, parts of the world like North America and Europe,
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to tag along with that, Chris. I actually know quite a few people who have done research in Mexico that have had very similar stories. And it makes you appreciate, where you do your own field work when you don't have to encounter situations like that. And, I give you a lot of props, Carlos. That's some scary stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, and now the horizon doesn't seem to like getting better, since I'm in the middle of my field work for my PhD, and this week there's some news that some terrorists made a blockade in the highway that I use the most for doing my work. So it's crazy thinking I had to go over there anytime sooner. So what's we gonna do? Let's find out. Well, you should adapt and overcome, and that's the only thing that we can do here.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's a reality, I guess, in working in these countries. Like, I mean, obviously, Michela, you can attest to this with your stories of that kind of crazy things that happen sometimes to people in the United States and Canada and Europe, of course. But it isn't great, but it's another level when you're working in some other countries in the world. So people who can put who take on that challenge to go out and do work like research, or people who do humanitarian work, or doctors, or anything in those situations, they really are really courageous and really taking risks to do that work. So, I would, like you said, Michela, hats off to you, Carlos, and everybody else out there who takes those risks and basically takes a risk, puts their life on the line sometimes for do this type of work. So, I really appreciate you sharing it. Again, now it's a funny story, but when you think of the reality of it, it's not funny at the moment at all. It's really scary and really intense. So, thank you.
Yeah, it will have faces like everything, but the funny part and the scary part, and we should acknowledge both of them, right?
Yep, exactly.
That life.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that and taking the time to talk about that. It's an intense story, that's for sure. One of the more intense stories we've had there, absolutely. Definitely lived up to the hype. I appreciate it, Carlos. So I guess we'll wrap it up there. We'll let you continue on with your day, and man, we'll definitely keep in touch. I'm sure we'll have you on again. Maybe when you have some results from your project, we can touch base on it again, and maybe one day when I come up and visit you, we can do an in-person episode as well, because I'm still going to take you up on coming up there at some point for sure. So maybe we'll do an episode together in the field. So.
Right on.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, it's a must.
Awesome. All right, man. Thank you so much. Guys. It's been a pleasure, and we will be in touch again. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, that was that was quite a story. I mean,
it really was.
I guess I should make it clear first, because sometimes I hear these stories and I kind of smile or laugh at it. It's like people probably think I'm heartless laughing at it, but it's more just like oh my God, I can't believe this is real kind of laugh. Like, it's like, wow. But I mean, you just, it's crazy. I guess, we we take for granted sometimes just the things that happen to field workers all over the world and the risks that they're taking. I mean, it sounds dramatic to be like, oh, they risk, but in reality, yeah, that's risky. There's no doubt about it. And obviously, we should one day talk to some anti-poaching unit in Africa, and God knows what they go through. And again, even people in the United States and Europe who, as I said, deal with these types of risks. And it is, I guess, yeah, it's an example of the risks that all field workers take. And then I guess it's an example of the heightened risk, like he said, that happens in the global South and in countries like that. And it's like, what do you do as a researcher? You can't go and say, oh, well, speak to my union about it. I mean, I don't mean to be negative, but it's Mexico. What are you going to do? It's basically you do the job or you don't. If you don't, somebody else is probably going to do it. It's just a fact of life, and that's a sad statement. And it's not meant to be negative toward any region or any culture. It's just unfortunately the reality right now. Very, very interesting. And again, it's a crazy story. It's a classic story you tell over a beer in a bar, but when you actually take time to think about it, it's also a really intense story and a really sad story in a way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that a lot of us have developed some, I guess, what maybe people on the outside would say dark humor, right? Because we are laughing. I think it's out of nerves. It's out of, disbelief. But at the same time, a lot of us have stories that are somewhat similar and maybe in different realms. But, I think what it is, it's a testament to show the passion that a lot of these people, such as researchers, such as Carlos, has for what they're studying. Because we're severely underpaid, we're overworked, we're heavily exploited. And not only that, but, we have researchers such as Carlos experiencing and enduring very realistic threats that, it could be life-ending. If we really think about it, these things are very dangerous. And yeah, it's unfortunately a big reality in a lot of other countries, and including the United States, including Canada. It's, I think that these things are not stressed enough. And I think it's really important to have people such as Carlos to elaborate and talk about, hey, these are things we are facing all the time, but I am so passionate about my research. I believe that I truly believe in my research that I'm going to endure it. And it's sad because we shouldn't have to, but it's a reality of the world. And I think that's important for our viewers to listen is that, hey, we're depending on where you work, you're going to experience some trials and tribulations that could be very dangerous. And I think that's something that we just don't talk about enough in our field is that, yeah, of course, people are starting to realize now that, yeah, we're underpaid. We're not going to have the luxurious life, but also there's dangers. And depending who you are, depending where you are, it depends on their severity.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think you made a really good point when you started that response was that was like dark humor. And I think that, yeah, how do I explain it? I think that everything about his story is exactly what, inspired me way back when Nick and me first started talking about it. And then I started talking to you about the concept of the show. I mean, everything about his story is kind of why I wanted to share these stories with people. And I think the fact that you're totally right, Michela, we do have a dark sense of humor is because these things don't surprise us. And that's actually what inspired me to want to have this show, was to show people things that for you, for me, and for people in our field are like, oh yeah, that's a story, but I've heard the same thing. Because for us, it's not a shock. That's why we laugh at it. But then sometimes, you do take a step back and you think of a listener right now who maybe is like, what the hell? This is not normal. Why are you laughing? This is crazy. For us, it's like, yeah, this isn't a surprise. But I mean, for the average person, this probably is a surprise. And I think that is I think it's important. Like you said, we're not, well, we might be a little broken sometimes, but but we're not totally broken. Like we know the severity of this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we understand the severity of this. We know this is not a funny topic, but it's just not a surprise to us, and I think in this case, sometimes it's nice to share these stories because they're fun and they're exciting to share, but other times they're also dangerous, and we don't share them to glamorize it, just to share it, to really help other people realize it. And I think that, like you said, we're not really trying to portray people who do this, as like heroic, like there's unbelievable things, because we're choosing to do it. It's our choice. We're passionate. It's a passion-driven thing, but I do think it's important people realize it. You're right about the pay, and it's also, I guess it's another example of the dangers that exist in the world that are as we talk about often, as we talked about a couple weeks ago in our episode about the fires, it's a symptom of a bigger societal problem, right? And everybody who works in these environments, whether it be a conservationist, a researcher, or whether it be a doctor, or whether it be someone else, like a humanitarian worker, etc., we get caught up in these things. And again, symptoms, like so much what we talk about, symptoms of bigger issues. But yeah, I that's why we have these reactions, these stories, is simply because for us, it just isn't a big shock. I'm not overwhelmingly shocked to hear this story, to be honest.
No, I'm not either. And that's like, I said earlier in the episode is that I know people who've gone to Mexico and they've had very similar stories. And it doesn't matter where you're from. It's just, unfortunately, it's reality. And, and you're right, like our dark humor, a lot of us have it. I mean, I think about when I came to the episode and I talked about being shot at, and I laugh at it, right? But the reality, it's like, that's a very concerning thing. Whether it was intentional or not, it happened. And if the wrong move, we have to realize people have died in our field too. And I think that this field it's so glamorized because you get to work with animals and you get to work outside and everyone wants that. But, I think we have to take a step back and be appreciative of, our lives, who we are, the route we've chosen, but also be understanding that, man, it comes with so many costs. And I think for people who are coming to this field, should be so aware of that. Not saying that they should deter them from it, but I think it's really important. Honestly, I'd love to write a book on it one day, just to talk about the realities of conservation. I think we should honestly talk about writing a book about it, because I think it's so important to give to young college students, across the world, who are like, I want to be the next wildlife biologist, marine biologist, next Steve Irwin. And it's like, hey, yeah, absolutely, you should. However, these are things that have happened. And these are things you could face. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. I mean, I'm in the United States and I've gotten shot at. Carlos is in Mexico, and, he could have, experienced a really different ending if something went wrong and awry. And I know you've experienced so many different, difficulties as well. And so to negate, overall, conservation is an amazing thing. We're doing so much good for our universe, for our world. But, these things happen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the the thing I would say is that, from my perspective, to sum it up, is that when we think of, regardless of what your feelings are on, police or military, and that's a very complicated subject I won't go into, but we know, basically, to summarize, we know, though, that there are many people serving in both sides that are actually doing it for good and actually know they're taking the risk every day, putting their life in line to try and help people. There are many, many, probably the majority here in that position. And the point is, we acknowledge it right off the bat. We know there's a risk. We are like, admire them for that, and that's it. And I'm not in any way saying our jobs are as dangerous as a police officer or military. That's ridiculous. It's not even close, of course. But nonetheless, there's much more risk than probably a lot of people do realize in our lives, and other sacrifices, which we've talked about. And I think that's probably, the main point that I would say, and probably you're trying to say as well, is just to explain that so people know it. And yeah, I mean, right off the bat, our host today, guest today, I should say, had warning shots fired off, and then you've been shot at, and I've been shot at as well twice during doing Cayman surveys in the river here in Peru. So it's just part of the job, I guess, but it's something, you're right, a lot of people don't really appreciate or understand. And to bring it back, that was one of the goals, was to share the realities behind the scenes of our lives. And I think that Carlos did a great job with his story of sharing that today. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I think he did a fantastic job. And honestly, I really wish that I know it probably won't be very PC in universities, but people who do decide to go to university for conservation, there should be safety classes, honestly, common sense classes, and it sounds silly, but I really do. I think that there should be classes of, hey, you're going on private property, you haven't contacted the owner, what do you do? What happens if someone's very aggressive that comes up on you? What if you get shot at? What do you do? These are things that we're not taught, but we learn very, very quickly because we're very adaptive people in the field, and some people more than others. And so I think that to have these resources is very essential, and maybe not PC, but, I think these are realities that are finally coming to light. And I think Carlos did an amazing job at really highlighting that. And I think that we're, just adding to the tail end. And hopefully as we grow in a unit across the world in conservation and biology, that we can start to address these main concerns, and hopefully people outside of our world can kind of empathize with us and help us along with it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Hopefully we can create a safer, more understanding environment for what we go through as workers. And then also, of course, ideally, we can have a larger scale societal changes as well. So these things just aren't an issue at all. But that's in a perfect world. And I don't think we're going to see that in the next few days. Let's put it that way. So, yeah.
No, maybe one day.
One day we can hope, right? Just like everything, we can focus on the here and now, and then we can focus on the long-term goal, just like we do in conservation, right? You said everything we're doing is important, and I think that we're doing it as part of the short term, we're doing it for the long term. And I think when it comes to how we create a safe environment for conservationists and researchers, it's the same thing. What can we do in the short term, and then also what can we do in the long term? So, yeah, really good conversation. To be honest, I didn't expect this conversation to come out of this interview, but I'm really glad. And that's the great thing about the show is you never know what you're going to get. I love meeting people and hearing their stories and what comes of it. So awesome. So we'll wrap it up. We will see who we have and what we do next week. But everyone, thanks for listening. To quote Nick, like and subscribe and share and do everything you can to spread the word about the show. And we will see you next week.
Leave any questions.
Yes, questions too. We always like questions, comments, basically any interaction that can tell the algorithm that people like our show. Anything you can do. Just love. In this case, love bomb us. Love bomb us all you want. Yeah.
First power.
Exactly. Give it just. Yeah, it is. Okay. We need to end this before this gets. Be sure she starts going off. Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.